The city cemetery is like an oasis of life with greenery and beautiful flowers, like the last island of nature unspoiled by man, located inside or next to a dusty, stuffy city. Therefore, Lenya loved to visit here. He was devoid of widespread prejudices that this is a creepy place where supposedly the souls of the dead can wander. Lenya did not believe in it, maybe because in his 20s he had learned things more terrible than fables about imaginary dangers. Lenya was homeless. He himself no longer understood and did not remember how he became a homeless man. It seemed to him that he had always been one. However, the paradox is that he remembered his life before vagrancy, because then his mother was alive, the only close and dear person in his life. But she died when he was only 12, and almost immediately after that he found himself on the street. A lot of trials fell to the lot of little laziness. He had to sleep on batteries in the entrances so as not to die in winter, begging, stealing, fighting. He was caught by the police several times, after which he had to live in an orphanage. However, he couldn't stand it there for a week and ran away every time. Lenya hated this institution because it reminded him of his mother, and that she was no longer there, and the street created the illusion that he just left his parents' house early, to which one day he could return to see the dearest and most beloved person in the world again. But the children's rejection of the tragedy has passed and Lenya has come to terms with the loss. Now he clearly understood, Mom was gone. Besides, since the age of 17, he began to come to her grave regularly and put things in order here. So today I came to my mother with a bouquet of fresh wildflowers. He was often here also because he became friends with the local watchman. A gray-haired, hunched old man, whom Lena called Sanik, was kind to the young man. He allowed him to spend the night in his guardhouse when the guy needed it, found part-time jobs for him at the cemetery, gave him food and even money. Today Lenya was going to paint the fence, because Sanik gave him an acrylic black mixture and a brush that had been left by someone on one of the graves. The first thing to do was to clear the ground of weeds, and the young tramp, squatting, carefully weeded. Carried away by the case, he did not notice how someone slowly approached him behind his back. It was a woman. She looked to be about 45. The clothes, youthfulness, and well-groomed appearance of the lady indicated that she was financially well off. Only when she began to sob, Lenya turned around and saw the guest. "Why are you crying here?" he asked in surprise, getting up and climbing over the fence. "You must have mixed up the grave." "No," the stranger replied, "I didn't mix it up. I've been here before. I come to pray for the repose of her soul." Lenya looked in surprise into the woman's moist eyes. It was hard to believe that his mother and this respectable lady could have something in common. "Thank you for taking care of her grave," a mysterious stranger suddenly said. "Did someone hire you? Did they pay you at least? Let me give you some money too." After these words, the guy finally decided that the woman had confused the graves from grief or had gone completely mad. The expression in his eyes betrayed this thought, and the stranger immediately caught it. "Don't you believe that I knew Antonina?" "What is it?" she asked. "Well, why?" the tramp answered, confused and uncertainly. "And how did you know my mother?" "What? Your mom?" the woman asked. "It can't be. I thought you were just hired here." But a strange visitor to the cemetery, started muttering something unrelated, and then his face turned pale. "What's the matter with you?" Lenya asked. A moment later, the woman collapsed to the ground senseless. Although the guy was surprised to the extreme by the whole picture, he was not at a loss. In a few moments he ran to the cemetery caretaker Sanik and called his help. The old man was also surprised by the appearance of a strange visitor. "Come on, raise your head," he told Lena. "We need to bring her to her senses, and then give her a sip of water." Sanik poured water from a bottle on the woman's face and began to slap her cheeks. She opened her eyes. "Well, have you come to your senses? Come on, get up, we'll take you to me, put you on the sofa. You need to lie down carefully," he said. The woman smiled slightly, glancing at Lenya, and then quietly said, "My God. How long have I been looking for you?" and briefly plunged into myself. Her name was Natalia. She was born in a poor family with many children, in which, besides her, there were 4 other children. They lived in a small provincial town, where it was not easy to find a good paid job, so her parents barely made ends meet. When Natasha turned 14, she was able to get a part-time job as a nanny in a kindergarten, and it was a tangible help to their family budget. But after graduation, the girl firmly decided to leave her hometown and go to the capital. She had been beckoning to her since childhood. TV programs and movies created in her head the image of the metropolis as a city of dreams. But Natasha was a realist by nature and was aware that no one was waiting for her there, and she would have to work hard. That's how it turned out, even a little worse. The fact is that it was not so easy to get the lowest grade job. Without experience, a metropolitan residence permit, and at least a secondary education, no one wanted to take a young girl. Natasha spent more than a week and almost all of her money before her luck smiled. She came across another ad with a search for a maid in the cottage. It turned out that a rich widow was looking for a housemaid. She died a year ago, husband, businessman. The deceased left her a large inheritance, including this gorgeous 8-room house. The woman lived in it with 2 adult sons, and they categorically could not cope with the management of the household. They needed a maid with permanent residence, to whom the hostess was ready to give 2 days off a week. The widow's eldest son followed in his father's footsteps and continued to run his business, and the youngest was a typical major. He did not want to study or work. Natasha liked the hostess very much because she was accustomed to work and did her job extremely carefully. She did not disdain anything, even doing physically hard work in the yard on the plot when the gardener was absent. Carried away by her new job and inspired by the thoughts that now she will start earning well, Natasha did not notice incidentally, as if half-jokingly, the youngest son of the hostess got carried away with her. He was a typical narcissist, confident in his irresistibility and superiority over everyone. Provincial girls, of course, flattered the attention of the metropolitan major, and she trusted him. They began an affair, a secret one. It then became clear to the girl why he asked not to tell his mother and brother about their relationship yet. The guy already had a bride, also from a rich family, a candidate approved by his mother. Natasha found out about this by accident after hearing her lover's conversation on the phone. The major immediately confessed everything to her. The trusting heart was broken by a cruel deception. It so happened that almost on the same day, or literally a day later, the girl found out that she was pregnant. This shocked and frightened her. She told everything to her lover, and he calmly said, "Go to the interruption, I'll pay for everything. My plans do not include becoming the father of a child, especially yours." Confused by everything that happened, the girl rushed with protection to the hostess of the house, who had treated her quite well up to that time. But the widow took the side of her son, saying to Natasha, "Our family and I personally will never recognize this child, and do not hope. My grandchildren cannot be born as servants." From the words she heard, large tears appeared in the pregnant woman's eyes. In the evening of the same day, she asked for a settlement from the widow, saying that she would not work here anymore. And the hostess was glad of this, because she understood that it might not work to force Natasha to get rid of the child. And the maid with the money that belonged to the girl, and even wanted to give in addition a rather large sum, but Natalia proudly refused. She didn't need their money or their work anymore. She could no longer live under the same roof with people who had treated her so cruelly. Therefore, although she had nowhere to go, she left this house. Natasha had managed to save some money by that time, thanks to the fact that the maid's job saved her from having to buy food and pay for housing. That same evening, she rented an inexpensive room in a hostel. Sitting on the bed and hugging her knees, she thought about how to live on. She did not even think about an interruption. She wanted to give birth and raise this child, no matter what it cost her. But I needed a job, and as soon as possible, while the pregnancy period was still small. The next morning, the girl went to a cafe nearby to find out if there was any vacancy. And, fortunately, it turned out that they needed an assistant in the kitchen. Natasha was hired with a probationary period, during which she proved herself well. The team was friendly, and Natasha got especially close to one colleague. The girl's name was Tanya. She was a little older than Natasha and also recently arrived from the outback. Colleagues became so close friends that it seemed as if they were sisters. In addition, after a while, Tanya offered a pregnant friend to rent an apartment together in order to save both of them. Natasha felt Tony's care and support and was glad that she was able to find a kindred spirit in such a difficult period of her life. Imperceptibly, it was time to give birth. A strong, healthy boy was born. But what happened next turned the whole life of the young mother upside down. On the day when the baby turned 1 month old, he disappeared, and not alone, but together with Tanya. It was obvious that a friend stole Natasha's child and ran away. The mother who lost her son then almost went crazy with grief. She was also tormented by guesses. Why did Tanya need her child? Contacting the police and independent searches did not yield results. The fugitive seemed to have disappeared, but the inconsolable mother did not leave the idea of finding her child, and she periodically resumed attempts. One day, many years later, when Natasha had the opportunity, she hired a good private detective, and he found Tanya, or rather her grave. And now, already an adult woman, from time to time visits the burial place of an ex-girlfriend who so treacherously treated her. Natasha continued to lie on the ground and quietly repeat, looking at Lenya, "How long have I been looking for you, son? How long have I been waiting for this moment?" Lena was already 100% sure that there was a mentally unhealthy woman in front of him. So at some point he stopped paying attention to what she was saying. "Sanic," he said, "well, how can I take her? I'm by the hands, and you by the feet or something? Or let's put her down and bring her to your couch by the arms." "Don't take me," Natasha said. "I'll get up myself now, I'm better. Just give me your hand, son." "What kind of son am I to you?" The tramp could not stand it. "My mother is lying here," Lenya said angrily and pointed to the grave. Natasha got up and began her story. The guy listened at first distantly, but when the woman came to the events related to pregnancy and especially to the moment of acquaintance with a waitress named Tanya, he listened without looking away. "What is this?" Lenya said when Natasha finished the story. "Isn't my mother buried there?" The guy awkwardly backed away, as if his legs wouldn't obey him. There was a bench nearby where he sat down. "I am your real mom," Natasha said, and tears literally sprang from her eyes. She walked over to her son and sat down next to him. "Calming down a little," she added, "and the one who is buried here, my friend Tanya, or rather, portrayed my friend, ingratiated herself into my confidence, and do you know who ordered her to do this? My failed mother-in-law, the same widow of a rich man, for whom I worked. She was afraid that I would somehow use my son against them, blackmail or claim part of their money. Of course, I had no such thoughts, but the widow was afraid, so she hired Antonina for a lot of money to steal you from her and give you to a rich woman. I wanted to raise you myself, grandma in quotes. I found out all about it recently." Lenya continued to listen to his mother's story with his eyes wide open, then grabbing his head with both hands, then shaking it. But the most interesting thing is that the rich woman miscalculated. Tanya was on her own mind. She took the money that was owed for the theft and did not give the child, that is, you, to the failed teacher. It turned out that Antonina was infertile. Almost as a teenager, doctors gave her the conclusion that she would never be able to have children. That's why she dared to abandon a rich family and keep you for herself. Apparently, she spent some time with you and immediately got used to you. The maternal instinct instantly woke up. It happens in women. And she just couldn't break up with you. I can partly understand her, so now I've forgiven her and I don't hold a grudge. Well, and then when Tanya took you, she was, of course, afraid that biologically her father or grandmother would find her, track her down somehow. That's why I came here with you, to the province. Yes, and I think she was afraid to meet me somewhere inadvertently. That's why I couldn't find you so quickly. And my ex-boyfriend, if you can call him that, at first denied his involvement in what happened. After all, after thinking about everything, I almost immediately began to guess that it was their family that was behind the abduction. I went to them one day and asked, just like that, "Did you kidnap my baby? Confess." They were amazed at my boldness and audacity and denied everything with confusion. And another time I managed to talk to your father in person. He also rejected all my suspicions. So he also accused me of being a clumsy such. She missed our child. Can you imagine our? I realized that it was useless to talk to them. I turned to law enforcement agencies, informing them of my suspicions about this family. I don't know if the check was carried out properly or not, but the police didn't help in any way, so it all went quiet for a long time. And a month and a half ago, a man came to me and said that he was sent by the same rich man, that is, your biological father, they say, asks to come to him on a very important matter. I had a premonition of something bad and, without hesitation, agreed. When I arrived to see him, I saw that he was lying in his house under a drip and there were some sensors on him, and 2 medics were next to him. "I am seriously ill, Natasha," he says to me right away, "and I may die soon." It turned out that he had stomach cancer, and now, anticipating the imminent end, he decided to clear his conscience with a confession. "You were right," he told me it was my mother who organized the kidnapping. In general, he told me everything as it was, but that's not all. He said that his mother died a few years ago from cancer, and his brother died last year flying a light engine plane, and now he owns everything alone. Everything that his father and brother earned went to him by inheritance, but he himself, apparently, will die soon and wants to give everything to me. He says we have only distant relatives left, but we never got along with them, so I don't want them to get anything. Yes, and I am to blame before you. I want to at least atone for my guilt a little, at least do one good thing before I die. It was he who advised me to look for you and Tanya again. He said that technology has gone far ahead during this time, and now there are more chances to find you. And then he even begged me to take the money and turn to a good private investigator, which I did. He couldn't find you, but he found out Antonina's fate and he told me where her grave was. And what about this man? Well, with my father, as it were, he died. Lenya asked. No, he is alive, but now he is undergoing palliative treatment in a hospice. Doctors couldn't cope at home anymore. He's really bad now. Lenya, shocked by the avalanche of information that had fallen on him, could not move. I'm so glad, son, that I met you here. I was already desperate to find you. When I found out that Tanya had died, I thought, well, that's it. Now there are definitely no ends to be found, and here is such a lucky chance. I don't hold a grudge against her. I understand that she is like a mother to you, and you lost her early. I understand everything, but you are my son. I also understand, said Lenya. I just have to digest it all. I ask you, let's go to him. He's really bad. I'm afraid he may die any day. He really wanted to see you and asked to find you. I'm sorry, but I'm like this. Never mind, son. Later I'll buy you a lot of good clothes, and not only clothes, but everything you need, because I'm rich now, so you're rich. But now there is no time for shopping and changing clothes. Let's go. Please. Lenya did not resist, and they went to the hospice. On the way, the guy told his mother about his life, about what he called after his mother's death. Antonin, out of habit, has been wandering for the last 8 years. Natalia was stunned by his story. She couldn't hold back her tears. And then Lenya broke through. But these were no longer tears of despair, nor of longing. That's how they cry when the bad finally ends. Both with red eyes, they came to Lenny's father. He was alive, although his consciousness was already confused. The doctor said that the tumor had begun to disintegrate. In this state, the heart usually fails, and the person dies. Lenya and her mother came up to him. Father, it's me, Lenya, your son. Do you hear me? Father, I have arrived. The man heard him and, smiling with difficulty, stretched out both hands. He couldn't get up anymore. Lenya lifted him up a little and hugged him tightly. It's me. Can you hear me? The guy repeated, but the father could not answer anything, only tears rolled down his cheeks. Lenya looked into his face and realized that Dad could hear him. The son hugged him again and did not let him out of his arms until 2 minutes later his father's heart stopped beating. How do you like this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Also subscribe to the channel. I love you.